Hey, Hunters, Halozu here for a quick little video that I kind of just ended up cobbling together real quick. Anyway, this is based on some stuff I've seen on YouTube. I might even link a video that kind of helped inspire this one. But this is going to be talking about 5e, D&D 5e, as well as a bit of 1e D&D. But basically, this is talking about the issues of first level, as well as my solution, which is going to be level 0 characters. So this is all stuff from Wizards of the Coast, and it's just like me throwing some stuff around. Though I will also mention my own personal homebrew projects, like 5.5 and the 6th edition concept I've recently shown off. So what are the issues of first level in 5e? First off, characters are way too fragile with only hit dice plus con mod HP. If you've played Lost Mines of Phandelver vanilla, you will probably notice just how bad this gets, though that is also not helped by the inclusion of bugbears in that adventure, which are, very freaking busted. Like, seriously, I don't know what were thinking with them. They either should not be the CR they are at and should be treated as much higher, or have their damage nerfed to where they're only doing 1 dice. But yeah. Point is though, starting HP is just way too low. There's nothing as bad as it has been in the past. I mean, we've had it, like, in the old days, it was even worse. Like, first edition, oh my gosh, they hate casters in that system. It's bad. But, anyway, yeah. Point is, very fragile characters. You're made of paper mache, which just isn't fun. Because nobody likes losing their character, and no one likes almost losing their character a bunch, or losing a bunch of characters. So that is definitely an issue that 5e has. It's something that pre-4th edition existed a lot. Because, yeah, pre-4th edition things got pretty bad. And granted, 4th edition, they did make the characters very durable. At times, maybe a bit too much, but oh well, it is what it is. Excuse me. Subclasses are locked to 3rd level, leaving a clear gap until they're unlocked. So basically, you're just playing a shell of the character you wanted to play, or you're playing a character and then are suddenly presented with a choice that you probably should have had at the start, or at least should have been designing around from the start. Such as Eldritch Knight being perhaps the worst example of this, where it's like, oh, you didn't have put much into intelligence. Okay. We're going to punish you for that now, because if you thought Eldritch Knight was cool, it's like, oh, wait, it's intelligence-based, so I can't really use it as a fighter because I dumped intelligence. I can't really get the best use out of it, which is just stupid. It's like, okay, why am I being punished for making a poor decision that the game doesn't tell me? Stupid idea. And some classes just aren't that fun to play early on, such as Paladin and Artificer, I'd say. Paladin and Ranger are probably the worst two at first level, though Original Ranger is even worse than Paladin. But Paladin is worse than Tasha's Ranger, I think. And the problem I have with Paladin is that you don't really have a good unique feature. Because while Lay on Hands does get better later on, it does start out as a worse second wind from Fighter, because it's limited to being daily. It's an action to use, and it can only restore 5 HP per day. That's it. Fighter, you can at least restore up to 11, and on average, it'll be about 6.5 HP each use. But you can get it back on a short rest, which means that for healing, Fighters are just a bit more fun and dynamic to use it. Sure, you can heal other people or cure a condition, but that's not really efficient, and it's sort of like, yeah, you can do it, it's very inefficient early on, and it doesn't really start getting better until later on. So, starting off, it's bad, and that's why I say Paladin, it's not as good. Sure, they don't have the third worst first level feature in the game, but neither is particularly good as a whole package. It's not as good. And for reference, I think Barbarian's Unarmored Defense is the third worst first level feature they've designed in 5e, with the exception of Original Ranger even existing. So, yeah, they win by miles. But Barbarian, it's not that good, unfortunately. Or at least their unarmored defense isn't, but this is about first level. So, yeah, some classes, not fun. Paladin being the standout of the base classes, and Artificer being pretty bad too, though they have the distinction of being the worst at second level, in my opinion, because Artificer in particular, like, before Tasha's and Eberron, I would have said, oh yeah, Paladins are the poster child for this is why you should have subclasses at first level, because Paladin, why is the Oath not part of being a Paladin? That is, like, the biggest thematic thing, and you have to wait until later to get it. It's stupid. Like, and the idea of being, learning the class and stuff, that doesn't really work with Paladin, because it feels like the Oath should be part of this is how you became a Paladin. And then Artificer came, and yeah, no, screw playing Artificers before third level. Screw that. You're telling me that the entire thematic aspect of how I do magic and stuff is locked to third level, and they have a spell list that's really bad without those extra spells that say, oh hey, you can actually have something that's kind of playable. And even then, some of them have some really bad stuff thrown in, like Artillerist getting shield. It's just like, why? Why could this not be something like Chromatic Orb or Magic Missiles? Because I don't have a good first level spell to use for what the class does, and instead I get a defensive spell. I don't really need that much. Because if I need defensive stuff, well, I can throw out the defensive turret. But no, it's just a bloody mess. And Artificer in general, like, if you've seen my stuff I've mentioned about 5.5, you might know that I've referenced, I don't know if I've said it, but I want to say I've referenced that Artificer is not the same class in 5.5. My plans for it are, it's basically just a new class, where Granted, well, I think I have mentioned it because it's kind of the poster child of, yeah, this predates Tasha's. And as a result, Artificer, the Artificer I was designing is completely different to the Artificer we got, where it's not even a half-caster, which I think is the main problem I have with it, where it's like, it does not really work well as a half-caster. And so I created my own, which is very interesting. And anyway, this leads to groups largely, back to the focus of this. Yeah, people just don't play at first level, because it's just better and more fun to start at third. Like, and that's my number one thing for DMs. Like, as a DM, my number one tip is don't start at first level. Start at third. And even in modules, it's like, yeah, you can kind of get away with starting at a higher level just because a lot of them just aren't balanced. Like, Lost Minds Fandolver, again, like, what the hell is this doing as the beginner box adventure? Like, why does it have to be such a brutal mess? I'd like to survive, you know? So yeah, it's like, so we don't play at first level because we like having subclasses to start off with, so we start at third. And it means we're not made of paper mache. We can actually survive some hits. And this unfortunately has a side effect that the game's unintentionally a bit harder to learn for newer players, as you have all the stuff. You're not just starting at first and it's like a limited thing. It's like, oh no, you've got all this stuff that you have to do and manage. So we kind of leave them neglected a bit, as realistically they should start at first level to learn best, but it's not fun, so we've kind of built around this idea that we start later on. So it is a bit of a player-created issue, but I think that's the actual problem with people being like, oh, it's a bit complex for new players to learn. It's like, not really. 5e's stupidly simple to learn compared to some stuff. Like, it's probably the easiest to, like, get the full nuances of compared to 4th edition and Pathfinder 2e and pretty much everything else. Like, anything before that, oh boy. Like, Pathfinder 2e is a lot more complicated to learn and stuff, because it's just a mess of stuff to understand. So it's a bit more daunting, but 4th edition, it's easy to get the basics of, though it's got a lot more nuance to it than 5e does, which is, yeah. But I feel like that's a bit easier to pick up and play, actually. But that's just personal experience. So, yeah. So, what's the solution? Sidekicks? Yeah, I've seen people suggest the idea, and I can understand the idea of, oh yeah, sidekicks are a great way to teach people, right? You know, you're playing a simpler class that's easier to understand and learn. That's a great idea, right? No. Just no. I get that thinking, but there's a lot of issues. For one, the best way to teach new players is to only teach one new player with a bunch of experienced players, because then they can help the new player learn. It's like, oh, hey, you need help with something? Okay, I can help with that. And it also means that the DM has to do less, as there's other players to help share the burden of teaching them. So like the DM can kind of take a step back and just DM and not have to teach people stuff. Sure, you can still do a group of new players, but sidekicks ain't the way to go. So for me, it's like you're giving them a kiddie bike rather than an actual player class, which means that it kind of feels disrespectful and a bit insulting that it's like, oh, you're a new player, so we're going to give you a sidekick to play instead. And while, yeah, it kind of acts as a mechanical ramp, they're weak and boring. It's not fun to play them long term. They're not easy to balance around long term. And ultimately, you're using something that was only designed with playing DMPCs in mind. Sure, you could have the system expanded on a bit, and apparently the UA where sidekicks were introduced, they were a bit more complex. I don't remember it off the top of my head. It's been a while, but even then, it's like you're giving them a kiddie bike and expect them to fully learn the game on a kiddie bike rather than give them something else that actually does some interesting stuff. And for me, I feel like it's a lot better to teach someone with something that, yeah, this is what players use. You should learn how to use what players play, right? And I also feel like, why disrespect a new player by giving them something easier and very simple, even for 5e, when you could just say, okay, you might struggle a bit with this, but as long as it's not Artificer, the new player will probably be fine picking up any class. Like, Wizard, I'd actually say it's not actually that bad. There's a lot of nuance to it, to playing it to the maximum, but a new player, it's going to be fine. It's not difficult to understand how the wizard works. Heck, it's, in my opinion, a bit too boring, where its spellbook is kind of treated as the be-all, end-all feature, with nothing else sprinkled on top. So, I do think it's fine to play most classes as a new player. Like, Fighter and Rogue are probably the better classes to start off with. But I've also seen Paladin is also a good class to start out with, because it, you start with spellcasting, which helps teach you how spellcasting works. It helps teaches how martials work, and kind of works as a good, hey, this is everything this stuff can do. And yeah, like, I just think sidekicks aren't a good way of actually teaching new players. And from the perspective of if I was a new player, I'd feel a bit slighted if it's like, oh, I'm stuck with a weaker class that's not great, rather than a class that was actually designed to be played. And I think we could ramp up the complexity of some classes a bit more. And I think we could also get rid of Champion. If you've watched my stuff, you probably have noticed that I have a very strong dislike of the Champion and its design. I do not like it. I have very much made it a point to get rid of the class and the subclass and give it all to Fighter, or at least most of its stuff to Fighter that actually made sense. And yeah. But my point is, we should treat new players with a lot more respect and say, okay, we don't expect you to fully master the game, but we'll give you an actual class. So, sidekicks, I think, no, that's not the way to do it. I get the thoughts. I just think it's a very stupid idea. And, like, for me especially, it's like, I do not want to be in a group teaching new players with sidekicks. I don't want that. And, sidekicks are fun for players as, like, a one-shot or a silly thing. Like, basically doing silly things with the sidekick system. That, as a one-shot, that can be fun, but as a long-term thing, no. I don't want to be in that game. And I think that's also something else where it's like, I don't think it's a good idea to try to teach players with a bad class. That's not a good first impression. I would say, okay, might be technically be harder to learn, but I'm gonna teach you with an actual class. And that's my philosophy behind why I think sidekicks. I am strongly against that. So, how do we fix first level characters so players actually want to play at first level? And you'll recognize this as stuff I've done with 5.5 and stuff that I'm doing with the 6th edition concept. Starting HP is hit dice plus con score. Just, why was the con score idea removed? Like, seriously, Wizards. It was so great. Because this basically vastly increases their abilities at low levels without breaking the balance later on. And it avoids the racial HP in Pathfinder 2e, which, in my opinion, just makes the races even more balanced. It's just... I don't get why they decided to tack on more stuff that makes it where, oh, you're punished for trying to make weird race class combinations. Why, Paizo? Why? It's not fun. It's like, I get picking the right race class combination can be fun, but making it where there's even more of an incentive to pick the right ones, yeah, no. Not a great idea. And I'd rather that not be the solution, because in my opinion, it's just, yeah, it fixes the starting HP problem, but it also tacks on more things to make races unbalanced compared to each other, which the game doesn't need. If anything, it needs less of that. The less, the better. So having the con score added, it's just like, it's the best solution. Flat out, it's the one solution. It works. And it makes it where things are, more balanced at low levels. And as you progress, adding the con score matters less. Like, in the second half of the game, it's like, so what? You have a bit more HP. That's not much compared to the HP you have normally. So it's like, it's a solution that I think would work really well. And it would also, like, heck, just doing that, I think Lost Mines of Phandelver would actually be 10 times more playable. Like, it's stupid how much that can make a difference. Where it's like, now you're not made of paper mache. Okay, you can now take some hits. Stuff like bugbears aren't the most BS thing in the world. And a room full of them isn't a death sentence. Also, second thing, implement subclasses at first level. That way players can begin the game with all parts of their character's identity unlocked. This does require changing multi-class rules, but those are kind of a mess anyway, so they should be addressed regardless. So, yeah, it works. But having the subclass at first level would also mean that there's no more noob traps like Eldritch Knight, where, oh, you didn't make your character with this subclass in mind? Ha ha ha! Now you can't really effectively play this subclass. Have fun! Which is just the worst thing in the world. Like, screw that design. 100% terrible. And it means that, oh hey, experienced players are actually fine playing at first level. You actually have a lot of dynamic stuff going on. And your character feels like the complete whole from the beginning of the game. Which I think would be a lot better, where it's like, okay, yeah, first level is actually kind of playable. Sure, you don't have a lot of the cool stuff you get later, like second level spells and all that. But at a base level, you have your the complete picture of your character selected. There's no trainee period. Like, first and second level aren't wasted on this shell of a character, and it doesn't get completed until third. Instead, it's like, okay, you start as the complete whole, not just a hollow shell. But how does this make it better for new players? Well, and what about a group of all new players? How would you address that? As this does actually make stuff at first level a bit more complex, which kind of defeats the point I made earlier about, starting at third level makes things a lot more complex. And while I think just having the subclass at first level doesn't actually add that much complexity on its own, I can understand that, yeah, this is a concern. So, pulling this out literally from a Dragon Magazine article for 4th edition, the idea of level 0 characters. So, this is an optional system, meaning that this is clearly designed as, okay, this is completely optional, you don't have to do it. And this also means that, beginning DMs are kind of clearly told, hey, yeah, this isn't really meant to be used. Like, normal games are meant to be played with starting at first level, but here's the level 0 option. So it's just an optional system that allows players to start the game with very limited features and stuff. Which is kind of what first level is right now. But having that forced on all players anytime you start the game at first level, not really that fun. So here we have an optional system that gives you the trainee period, while making it clear that, like, yeah, you're not supposed to be the full picture yet. This is you training and stuff. And kind of sells that trainee period way better than having it at third level and stuff does. So, players still choose their class, meaning the 12 classes in the player's handbook, those are the classes you're choosing from. You're not being given a kiddie bike class. You're given the actual base classes, which means that you get a better idea of what the game is going to be like going forward. You do get the first level features, so you would get lay on hands, you would get favored foe, you would get rage and stuff like that. That is all unlocked at the beginning of the game at level 0. However, you do not get the subclass, which is gated to first level, which, I mean, for me, as much as I would like to say, oh yeah, you get the subclass too, it's intentionally a thing of, okay, well, we'll let you play just the base class here. And as it's an optional thing, it's like, okay, we can kind of be more lenient and loose with what you have. And something had to be cut, so it's the subclass. As it just works better mechanically to just say, yeah, you get the core stuff, not the subclass. And then we have the HP. So how does that work? It's just start your first, just half your first level HP. Simple as that. And it is rounded up, mostly because I felt like having it round down would kind of make you more fragile, so having it round up I think is a bit better, because it lets you squeeze out all the durability you can. especially for characters who have some odd-numbered stats. Most of the time, this probably won't matter, but new players are more likely to have odd-numbered stats than experienced ones, because experienced players realize that, oh, hey, starting with odd-numbered stats is a terrible idea, because you don't get anything out of it. And there's also stuff like starting with the 17 is like, why would you do that? You're an idiot for doing it, because there's no reason to have 17 instead of 16, because it's the same modifier. You can just as easily buff it up. And yeah, you don't really get much benefit out of starting into 17. Something that I wish Baldur's Gate 3 respected and understood. But no. Character starting stats had to be terrible in that game. That, and they also just really, really screwed up designing the characters. Like, why the heck would I get Firebolt as a high elf spell cantrip as a cleric? Why? Just why? But anyway, ability scores above 11 are reduced by 2. The reason I specify above 11 is that I decided that I didn't want them being reduced if they're 10 or below. And I decided that it would be awkward if you had a stat that was previously just a neutral one be reduced to a negative. So I decided that it would be best if it was just anything that would have been above 11. Just so it's not, oh yeah, by the way, your worst stat is even worse, but to a level that is abnormally low. And also, like, 10 is supposed to be average, so I decided that, okay, you just have your extraordinary talents represented fully. So it's like, you know, as a wizard, you're not as intelligent, but you're just as strong. Like, you didn't get stronger becoming a first level wizard. You are, like, below average or below in strength, and then you become smarter, but then your low stats are not increased as well. Which is another thing where it's like, you know, why would you increase the low stats? And I think it just fits a lot better to have it this way, where it's like, okay, you're not gonna have anything from, like, with a +0 be reduced. But if it's a +1 or higher, it will be reduced by 1. And I think I will have this still affect your con, so if con is above average, then you would actually get 2 more HP to start off with, in addition to having the full HP added. Then full casters and pact mages get 1 spell slot per day in addition to all their cantrips. This is mostly to just say, okay, you have spell casting, you have first level spells still. As tempting as it is to do just cantrips, I decided that it'd be reasonable to say you get 1 first level spell per day. And note that this also affects the warlock, as I decided that they should be treated like a full caster for this, just because it's a decent on-ramp. But basically, you just get a spell slot that you can use each day, and you do have all of your cantrips. So yeah, with that, all the cantrips also being partly because of classes like the warlock, where you do not get many. So having fewer would be absolute hell. And I think 5e in general, like, you have a really low number of cantrips known, which is worse because it's combined with offense and utility options, which is not a fun choice, but if you've seen 6th edition stuff, you know what I do with that. But for the level 0 stuff, I think it's a very good system where it's like, oh, hey, we have something that we're not giving you a kiddie bike. We're instead giving you the core class. You don't get the full toolkit just yet, but you have the basics. And it's designed, it's not designed to be a long-term thing. No, it's something designed for players to use that you get to play. You get you may not have the full toolkit just yet, but you will get it, and it also offers something to experienced players. Something that using sidekicks doesn't, as even an experienced player can have a lot of fun with this system, as, maybe you start off as a young kid in training, and you have that as like an origin point of, maybe you're all at some like adventurer academy or something. Like, and that's where you start off as, you're just picking up the basics and all that as you grow up. Maybe one of the characters is a squire and is literally a squire to a knight. They're not a full paladin yet. They're just the squire, but they're in training. And I think this offers a lot of opportunities that simply using sidekicks doesn't really offer, while also making it clear that, this is the direction you want to play. Okay, if you want to play this class, we'll teach you with this class. And I think that's a lot more respectful to new players' abilities and such. So I hope you've enjoyed this video, and so if you want more D&D stuff, as well as gaming stuff, which I'll eventually get around to, when I decide to finally start doing the idea that I've had for a while, among other things. But anyway, like and subscribe to stay tuned for that stuff, whatever the crazes it is. I don't know. The next video I do next Friday might be, because I'm not doing a Thanksgiving thing. And even though it's Black Friday, yeah, I'm going to do something, but I don't know what I'll do, but, I don't think there is going to be a one D&D playtest, so I don't know. We'll see. But, without further ado, see y'all next time! Halo Zoo, out.